Hello everyone, good evening. I'm sharing my screen. So we'll pick it up from where we have left off in our previous session, guys. I'm going back into our project. So we looked at various possibilities in case of FPGA integrations, and I discussed what exactly you need to do in case of 4 different scenarios that you're likely to encounter. But if you look at this S4, so what exactly are we trying to do in here? First of all, if you don't get a property file, we'll create one. And when it comes to data file, if you don't get it in required format, we can read that file that we're getting from our data source. It doesn't matter whether it is in CSV or XML or JSON. We can read the file, and depending on the file size, you either read it in one go or you read it in segments. And within the loop, we are generating a file in FPGA format. So in simplistic terms, we are basically doing the required transformation within the integration layer itself. So you're reading the non-FPGA data file, and you are using that content to generate the file in FPGA format. But if you have to do a much more complex processing than what you see here, if you do much more complex processing, if you have to do any bulk validations, then we cannot handle all the required transformations within the integration layer itself. And that's exactly when a database comes into picture. So whenever you have to do some complex transformations, which are quite difficult to handle within the integration layer, it could be complex transformations, it could be complex validations. In all such cases, we make use of a DB layer. And how does the DB layer work, guys? So if you go into integrations, I'll open this. And if you look at this, so if you scroll down, you see that there are 4 scenarios that are listed down here. And I've also mentioned what exactly you need to do in each one of them. And if you have to do complex transformations, then we make use of a database in it. And how exactly are we going to use a database layer, guys? So you would list down the files, loop through them, and you download a file. And you're going to read the file in segments. And whatever file content that you are reading, whatever non-FPGA file we receive from our data source, we read it in segments. And we are not going to generate the FPDF file with that content. Instead, we're going to dump it to a temporary table or staging table in APP. So we would use perform an operation on a table option first, and we would insert the non-FPDA file or records into the temp table or tables. So if there are multiple files, you dump them into multiple tables. If it's only one file, you dump it into one file. I'm talking about what you have within the zip file, not the multiple zip files. And after you dump the data into temporary or staging tables, we kick off a procedure in APP using invoke a procedure option. And in this procedure, we're going to plug in all the logic that you need to transform or enrich the data. And after we transform and enrich the data, we're going to populate the data into final FPGA table. And after the data is populated into final FPGA table, whatever is transformed, enriched, and validated, we need to pull the data from that final FPGA table back into the integration layer by running a SQL statement. So we need to run a SQL statement, and with that SQL statement, we should be able to pull the data. Okay, so we can write a select statement to pull the data from final FPGA table, and we're going to use that content to generate the file in FPGA format. Okay, so instead of using the content that you have received from our data source in non-FPGA format, instead of generating the file directly with that content in the integration layer, you dump it to a table, kick off a procedure, do the validations, and get the data back from database into the OIC instance by running a SQL statement. And then we use that content to write the FPGA file. So let's see how to do these operations. So I'm going to clone S4. I'm going to clone S4. And I'll just call it as ATP. And I'm going to pull these two out. Okay. I'm going to paste it outside. And whatever is the non-FPDA content that we are reading from a data source, right? I would like to insert the data into ATP table. So I'm going to use ATP connection. And let me also connect to the ATP DB. And in this particular database, I've created two tables. Guys. The first table is a temp table that I created, GL daily rates underscore TMP. And my intention is to dump the non-FPDA data file. So what is a non-FPDA data file that I'm going to get from data source, guys? If I go into OIC, if I go into FPDI, sorry, not this one. If you look at the non-FPDA CSV file, open it with the text editor. So this is a non-FPDA file that I get, and I have from and to currency, from and to date, and I've got exchange rate and inverse rate as well. So I have 6 columns in this non-FPDA data file. So I created a table with those 6 columns here. So I created a temporary table with the columns that I'm going to get from Bloomberg in a non-FPDA format. And to help me identify what is the exact records of that particular file, I'm going to use 2 columns to identify the exact data set. One of them is an instance ID, and the second one is a file name. So the instance ID it used to be a number column in Gen 2, but it has been changed to a varchar column in Gen 3. So yes, you need to make that change. So this temporary table I created with instance ID and file name, I'm going to use it for batching purposes or to identify the exact data set. And I have 6 columns to insert the non-FPDA data file. Okay, so I've connected to that particular DB here. And I'm querying the temporary table here. And if you look at the data here, what is it that you get to see? You see the data here in this particular format. So you see instance ID, file name, from and to currency, from and to date, exchange rate type. So we need to have exchange rate type here. The fields are not writing here. Yeah, we can just pick up one file. Okay, so if you look at this one, so I want to insert data into this temporary table. Whatever data that I have received in a file, I want to dump it into this temporary table like this. So these are the these are the columns that we get from data source. Okay, 6 columns or 6 records, and I also have, and I can also just say. Okay. Okay, so we have data populated. So we're going to dump the data into this temporary table first. So in the integration layer, I would say insert non-FPDI data into ATP staging table. And I would do a perform an operation on a table here. And I say insert operation. Search for the temporary table here. Move it to the selected list, continue. And after you select the table, we need to import it so that the definition gets imported. And you can select a combination of records here as a primary key. So all I'm trying to do is whatever is a non-FPGA data file that I've got, I want to dump it into this temporary table. And after I dump the data in the temporary table, I need to map the columns. So I need to map the instance ID first of all, and the file name. And whatever is a non-FPGA data file that we have read here, we will map that non-FPGA data. And status, we can mark it as, yeah. Create a target node. So what am I trying to do here? I'm just dumping the non-FPGA data file that I received from data source here into the temporary table. And after that, what we want to do is we want to run a procedure in ATPDB. So I'm going to use the database connection again. And you say invoke validate GL daily rates PRC procedure. And I'm going to say, call it as invoke a stored procedure. And I select the schema as admin schema. And I wrote a procedure like this. It's not fully built, but this is how the procedure is going to look like. So you say create or replace procedure name. You call it as validate GL daily rates PRC. And this procedure is going to take in instance ID and file name as input parameters. And these two parameters will help us to identify what are the records that you have in a temporary table. So these two inputs will help us to identify the exact data set or exact records of that particular file. So we're going to read that file content. Okay, so we're going to read that records from temporary table, and we loop through it. And within the loop, what are we going to do? We would be running all the validations here. So whatever validations that you want to do, say for example, if we need to validate whether the from and to currency are valid in ERP cloud, very much possible, right? Client might ask you to do that validation. So what do you need to do? You need to go ahead and search. We need to check if this currency, the from and to currency, are valid in ERP cloud or not. In ERP cloud or not. So how do you validate it, guys? So first of all, where is the currency information stored in Fusion Cloud? We go into setup and maintenance. Search for manage currencies. And if you do a blind search, you will be able to see the currencies information here. So this is a screen in Fusion Cloud where currencies are defined. So where is this information stored in the backend, guys? Any guess? What if I want to query this data in a table? F&D currencies, right? So I need to. No, this is not daily rates. This is a currencies table. This is currency screen, right? So we wanted to validate whether these are valid currencies in ERP or not. So in ERP, in this screen, I can see the table, see the details in the front end. But where exactly is it stored in the back end? Is if you go to tools, data reports model and analytics. Yes, we need to write a data model and query the F&D currencies table. So you go ahead and create a data model under published reporting. And we need to write a SQL query here, FSCM. So we need to do a select star from F&D currencies. And this table is going to give me the data. And this table is going to give me the data. Right, so I'll be able to see the currencies information here. So what is the currency name, whether it is valid or not, is it enabled or is it undated or not? So I'll be able to see all that information here. Now tell me one thing is, can I run that query here? Would I be able to find this table in ATP?
No.
No, right? Because this DB has got nothing to do with this Fusion Cloud database. So what is it that we need to do? But client said that, Prasad, we need to validate a from and to currency before we send it to cloud. Ideally, we can go back and say that, boss, we don't need to really validate, because if they are not valid, what would happen? Those exchange rates would not be loaded in the application. They would be lying in the interface table. And in the callback integration, when we send out a notification, what do? We are attaching a zip file, right? In that zip file or log file, you would be able to see what all currencies are invalid. Or what else we can do? We can also extract a file from GL daily rates interface table where a currency or error flag equal to E, and we can send that as also as an attachment. So we don't need to really validate it, but if client stresses on it, or maybe you need to validate, do some custom validation based on what you have in Fusion Cloud, what do? Since we cannot access those ERP tables in ATP here, what is it that we would do, guys? There are 3 steps or 4 steps we need to do.
Same structure we need to replicate in.
Yeah. So debilling also not possible. Even if so, no matter what you do, guys, you would never be able to connect to this database. Plain and simple. Okay. So what is it that we are going to do? We are going to do this. So since this table is not accessible, we are going to create a table called XXFND currencies. And this table is going to have the structure which is exactly same as FND currencies. And we'll create a BA publisher report. And when we go live, when the client goes live, say for example, they have gone live today. So what is it that we're going to do? We are going to get the dump of currencies from ERP. So I'm going to export this dump and I'm going to import it into this table. Okay. So as on today, whatever data that you have in Fusion Cloud currencies table, that would be same as ATP table. And after that, what I would do, I would create a BA publisher report. And in that BA publisher report, how am I going to create it? I'm going to build it in such a way that it would extract currencies in incremental manner from FND currencies table. So you do select star from FND currencies table where last update date is greater than state -1. So only the currencies updated, or we can probably do something like this. We can say last update date equal to. So if you want to get only the updates, only the currencies which are updated in the last 1 day, you can do it by running a query like this. So whatever currencies are updated, created in the last 1 day, you get this, you get that information extracted by the SQL statement. And you will build a scheduled orchestration in OIC. You would kick off that BIP report. And say, for example, if you have 200 currencies today, 200 will match. And say tomorrow, okay, on Saturday, let's say 2 currencies are updated and 1 new currency is added. So 3 new currencies will be extracted by the SQL statement in a BIP. So we would build a scheduled orchestration and we probably schedule it to run every day in the morning, maybe at 1 o'clock or before FPDA runs, okay, before FPDA main service runs. And that is going to run this BIP report, get those 3 currencies, 2 updated currencies and 1 new currency. And from that integration, we kick off a BIP report, read that CSV output that is generated by BIP, where you have 3 currencies and you're going to merge that information in the ATP table. And after that, what do we do? Within the integration, we're going to call a procedure which is going to search this particular table to validate the currencies received in exchange rates file from Bloomberg. Okay, so we create a table, schedule orchestration, BIP report to extract currencies in incremental manner, and you merge them to ATP table. Now, where exactly, Prasad, where do we do hands-on for this one? So when we do the outbound flow service, in the outbound flow service, I'm going to show you exactly the same thing. In the outbound flow service that we're going to build, I would do the exact same thing. Okay, so I'll show you how to kick off a BIP report, get the CSV output. I'll show you how to dump it to SFTP, and I'll show you how to insert to ATP. And when we do this integration, I will again bring you back to the same screen, and I'm also going to talk about it one more time. But for now, just remember that whatever master data or any set of data that you need to do validations in ATP, this is the process. Create replica tables, build incremental BIP extracts, run them from scheduled orchestration and merge the data into ATP replica tables, and use that replica tables to do the validations in a procedure. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to check if from currency is valid or not. And in a similar fashion, I also need to validate if two currency is also valid or not. And if both of them are valid, I'm going to mark that particular row as validated. So initial status would be N, and I'm going to mark it as N, V. And if any of the record errors out, I'm going to update that particular row as E. Okay. And we're going to do this in a loop. We would be doing this in a loop. And after we do this in a loop, what is it that we're going to do? You can probably check if we have any exchange rates with invalid currency. And you need to ask the client what you need to do if there are few invalid exchange rates. Few invalid currencies. So depending on that, you need to decide what logic that you need to plug in here. And if everything is fine, so what is it that you're going to do? I've also created one more table here, which is in FPDA format. Now, what's the difference between the Bloomberg file and FPDA format? The fifth column in the file needs to be exchange rate type, right? So here you have 8 columns and here you have 9 columns. Here you have 8 columns and here you have 9 columns, and you have exchange rate type. Okay. Now this exchange rate type is fine, so we're going to leave it that way. Instance ID, file name, and 7 fields. So after I do all the validations, remember, if you also need to do some transformations, you're also going to plug in that logic here, guys. So transformation, validations, and after everything is done, we're going to get the data from temporary table. We would pick up the validated records and we would insert it into the GL daily rates table, final FPDA table. And when you do it, if it is a fixed exchange rate type that you need to use, you can insert it. Or if you need to derive this date based on some other criteria, you can plug in that logic as well. And after that, at the end of the procedure, we're going to send out a success flag. Of course, commit is required, and then we do a success flag as Y or N from an exception. So we will build a procedure like this, and this procedure is going to look at the replica tables in ATP to validate the currency codes. And if everything is fine, the data would be inserted to final FPGA table. Now, how do we call this procedure? In ATP, we make use of ATP connection invoke a stored procedure option. And remember, when I compile this procedure, right, I didn't include it as part of any package. So it's a standalone procedure. So that would be available as a default package. And here I'm going to click the validate GL daily rates procedure. And after you pick up that procedure, you click on finish. And what is it that we need to do? First of all, we are reading the file in loop of 2000 records each, and we are inserting it into a temporary table. Then we are kicking off a procedure to validate the GL daily rates. Now to the procedure, I need to pass in an instance ID and a file name as input. And after the procedure call is successful, I want to use a switch statement to check if procedure call is successful or not. And how do we check if the procedure is successful or not, guys? Because remember, from the procedure, we get a response. And in that response, we have a success flag. So I need to check if that success flag is equal to Y. So this is what I need to verify. And if that is why, what is it that I want to do, guys? We need to do all the steps that you have afterwards, right? So all these steps we need to perform only if the procedure is validated. I'm going to select all of them, right? And I'm going to paste it in here. You can save it. And I can delete this procedure. Sorry, what we need to do is, I'll come to this in a moment in the mapper. So if the procedure is successful, what is it that we need to do, guys? Yes, the data would have been inserted into the final FPDA table. So what is it that I have to do? So I need to go ahead and get the data from that final FPDA table. Okay, so this is how the data is going to look like. And I think in the case of exchange rate, somebody has populated the entire string. Well, that should not be the case ideally. Yeah, this is something we can make use of. Okay. I'm going to just copy and paste it here. Otherwise, let me just copy this condition. So if you look at this, if you query the table in the FPDA final FPDA format, you have the data inserted in the same format that we need to send it to ERP cloud. You have from and to currency. Sorry, looks like this is also messed up. Somebody appropriated the wrong currency date there. Okay, we don't have any appropriate data in here, but that's okay. So the data would be populated into GL daily rates table. And when the data is populated into this table, so we need to pull the data from this final FPDA table back into the integration layer, and we need to use that content to generate FPDA file. So I have data in this final FPDA table in ATP. How do I pull the data from this table and generate FPDA file out of it, guys? So I need to use ATP connection again, and I'm going to use the third option now. So I'll say pull FPDA data from ATP to integration. And I'm going to use the third option. So I did the first one already to insert non-FPDA records into staging tables, and then I kicked off a procedure to validate the data. And now I'm running a SQL statement to get the required data from ATP. And what's the data that I want to pull, guys? I want to pull the from and to currency. Okay, I want to pull the from and to currency, from and to date, exchange rate type, exchange rate, and inverse rate. 7 fields that we need for FPDA file from GL daily rates main table, where instance ID equal to so and so, and file name equal to again a parameter. So when you write a SQL statement here, so what is it that I'm trying to do? I'm trying to get the data from final FPDA table based on instance ID and file name. And how do you pass in parameters as input to this, guys, to the SQL statement? You have to use hash for it. You have to use hash for it. So I'm getting from and to currency, from and to date, exchange rate type, and the 7 columns. I'm going to validate this. Please note that you should not use a colon, guys. It has to be hash when you have to pass input parameters. And after you click on done, I'm going to pull the data from FPDA table based on instance ID and file name. And I need to use this content, whatever is the response that I get here, I need to use that content to generate a PDF file. So I'm going to delete the mapper and add it one more time. I'm going to select this write FPDA data file option. And whatever is the data that we have pulled from ATP, right? Whatever is the data that we have pulled from ATP, we are going to have this. Exchange rate and inverse rate. Okay, so these are the steps that you need to plug in if you have to do any complex transformations. 3 simple steps: read the non-FPDA file, dump it to a staging table, kick off a procedure. In the procedure, you're going to plug in all the required logic, whatever is the transformation, validations, all the logic you need to plug in here. And we check if the procedure is successful. And if that is the case, then we try to pull the data from ATP table, and the final ATP table, and we're going to generate FPDA CSV file. Remember, guys, some business objects expect you to pass in 2 separate FPDA files, like the case of AP invoices. In such cases, you would pull the data from 2 tables and you would generate 2 FPDA CSV files. So if you have got multiple CSV files, you just have to repeat the steps accordingly. But in short, this is what we were doing. Okay, so we were reading the data from FPDA, reading the file and segments, dumping it to staging tables, kicking off a procedure to do the validations, etc. And then you run a SQL statement to get the data from ATP back into the integration layer. And we also do the dump the data into FPDA format. And we can generate a write and a property file if required, and then send it to cloud. Okay, any questions, guys, in this one, in this database approach?
Prasad, that for each loop is there in the integration.
Yeah, it is still there. Well, that is precisely why. So if you ask me why,
for each, okay.
Yeah. Since we have a for each loop, I cannot, when I insert a record, when I validate a data set, right? So what are the fields that I'm using to identify the data set? If you notice, I was using a combination of not just the instance ID
and the file
name, because what would have happened if I don't have a file name? If it is only instance ID, what would happen if I have 2 files, right? So first file, it will work absolutely fine. But when the second file is processed, right? Yes, second file records would be inserted to ATP table. And if I kick off this procedure only with instance ID, it would pick up the first file record and the second file records as well, right?
Correct.
So that is why what I have done, I'm not using just the instance ID, I'm also using file name as a parameter. Okay, and I'm doing the validation and pull the data from ATP, use that to generate a PDF file and send it to ERP cloud. Okay, now how do you deal with fixed length files? Say, for example, if it is a non-FPDA file, if you have to do transformations, you do it this way. So what is it that you do with a fixed length file if you get it? Like maybe a logbox file. So what we will do is we'll create one table. We'll create a table. We can probably call it as a fixed length files. Let me write it down here. For fixed length files, what is it that you're going to do? You will create a table called logbox staging table, and you would have only one record, one column table it is. So you can say logbox record, and you would create it as a varchar table. Okay, varchar. So you're going to create a table called logbox staging table. Okay, logbox underscore staging. Or you can probably call it a stem table. And in this table, you would just have one column. And after that, what do we do? You would same do an insertion. So whatever data that you get, right? Whatever data that you get here, you're going to dump that file into that one record table. So since we don't have a delimiter, right? Since we don't have a delimiter, how will it be treated, guys?
Non-FPDI.
Yeah. Since we don't have a delimiter, how is it going to treat it as? So this entire string is going to be treated as one row. This entire string is going to be treated as one row, the complete string. So what is it that I'm going to do? I'm going to select this particular table, and I'm going to select this table. Okay, so I'm going to create this table called temporary table, and I'm going to insert this entire non-FPDI, this logbox pixel length palette. I'm going to dump it into this particular table. Okay, insert into this table, insert logbox file into this temporary table. And after that, what do we do? Remember, so if you have 10 records in the file, if you have say 1,000 records like this, each record, so this entire row, one row in file will be inserted as one record into the table. It would be inserted as one record into the table. Okay, so this entire string, the first row would go into one row in the table. The second row, entire string will go into the second row into the table as second row. And this entire third row will go as third row into the table. And of course, apart from record, you would also have instance ID and the file. That is common sense. Okay. And what exactly are you going to do after that? After you create a table like this with the instance ID, file name, and the logbox. Okay. And this also instance ID also has to be varchar now, guys. It was a number earlier. And after you do this, what do? You insert that non-logbox file into logbox temp table. And what do you do afterwards? So you call a procedure, and in that procedure, what logic are we going to have, guys? You would have the transformation logic. So what transformation logic you have? So you would do a select star from this table. Okay. So you would do something like this. Okay. You would do something like this from a temporary table. And what you would also do is within the loop, so you have this logbox temporary table, and this temporary table has all the file content. So one row in a file is inserted as one row into a table, and it is a single column table, remember. And what am I going to do now? I'm going to do a select star from that table. Okay. Select star from this table. Or what you can do is, you can also do one more thing here. So instead of doing it this way, what you can do is, we will create individual staging tables here. Okay. So you're going to create individual staging tables. You would create a receipt table. You would create invoices table. Okay, and so on. So what is it that you're going to do? And when you get the data from this temporary table, you get the data based on instance ID and file name. And if a specification given by Wells Fargo says that the first record, so if the first digit in a record is a 6, it is a receipt, then what is it that I would do? I would say this one, logbox record substring of 1, 1 is equal to 6. So this is going to give me all the receipt records. So I'm trying to get records from a temporary table which starts with a digit 6. And what is it that I'm going to do? I'm going to insert into this receipt table, and I would insert all the data. whatever data that you have, right? So you would you don't even need to do it in a loop. You can basically do something like this. To keep it frank, to keep it simple, we can do something like this. Okay, so we can insert data into this table by running the SQL statement, or you can get the required columns and then you can insert data into this particular table. Whatever columns you need, you can get it in the select statement, and you can also mention the columns here. Whatever columns you have in the receipt table, you mention the column details here, and here you get the same columns here. You get the same columns here, and this column list should match with this column list, and all the 6 records would go into receipt table, and you're going to repeat the same thing for the invoices table as well. And the invoices table, what would be the difference, guys? So invoices, client might say that all the records whose first digit is 4 is an invoices table. You can mention it that way. And so this is a transformation that you need to do in case it is a fixed length file. So first of all, you dump everything into one single table, which has only one column in it. Dump everything into one single column, then do these transformations. And after that, you can go ahead and validate the data. After that, you can go ahead and do the validations. So in addition to the validations, or even before you do the validations, in case of logbox, there would be a lot of transformation that you need to go in. There will be a lot of transformation that needs to be plugged into it. Okay. Any questions, guys? This is how you deal with the fixed length files. Dump it into single column table, do the substrings and strings, and then do the required validations afterwards. Any other questions, guys, from anyone? Okay. Try out all these permutations and combinations, guys, and let us know. So from tomorrow, we'll get started with, not tomorrow, Monday, we'll get started with the publisher subscriber integrations, which is a different set of integrations altogether. Okay. Yeah, I could see somebody raising a hand. Yes, Abhinav, please go on.
Prasad, for downloading, the limit was 1 GB. Is there any possibility that higher amount of
No,
more than 1 GB?
Not more than 1 GB. But usually, see, for text files or CSV files, right? So we're not going to download an MP4 file. So 1 GB is more than sufficient. But if it is crossing 1 GB, you definitely have to ask the source system to split the files. Beyond 1 GB, it cannot be. You cannot handle it for sure.
All right. And a small question here.
Yeah.
Yesterday we were transforming a non-FBDI file. So I can see in a FBDI fixed format file, the date format was like year, month, and then date. So what if in a non-FBI format somebody gave me we need to change the format, shuffle the format, something like that. Date, month, and year is somebody is giving.
You can do it in the procedure, right? In the procedure, you can do the required transformation. Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions, guys, from anyone?
Yes, Prasad. Prasad, for Lockbox, correct? Generally, we have a different SQL loader file in traditional Artwell. So in OIC, we don't have that concept at all, correct? SQL loader we can call by any chance. We have to follow this way only if we have to do transformation.
Yeah, you have to do it this way only. And you need to generate the FPDA file finally in that format that is going to get configured in Fusion Cloud. So you're talking about the Logworks format, right? That configuration that functional consultant is going to do. You will eventually generate the FPDA file in that format, in the same format that is going to generate it. Yeah. Yes, Sachin. Thank you.
Yeah. Yesterday, Prasad, we have seen we are sending a file back to FTP, like file sent to ERP. There we are sending our own file which we generated, like CSV file and the property file. So this is the file which we generated. Why we are sending our file? Like they are.
Yeah. The only reason is Okay, let's say you are working in an integration team, support team. Okay, so for a moment, let's assume that just assume that I am your lead, support team lead. So I call you at 6 o'clock in the morning. I say, Sachindra, exchange rate upload has failed. Okay, what is the first question that you ask me, or what is the first thing that you would ask? Okay, so you will ask, Prasad, what is the exact data file that is loaded? Is it the same data file that we have received from Bloomberg that we loaded to cloud, or did we do any transformations in between?
We did the same CSV file. So we changed.
So yeah, so we changed it, right? So you don't know what are the changes done. So we cannot sit down and work out with a piece of paper and pen what exact transformations are done in a project. So we want to make that information readily available for a support team. So that's why we are dumping that file in SFTP. So what is Sachindra is going to do now? Since I'm dumping that file in that SFTP location, he would go to that folder first. He would open up that zip file. He would exactly see what is the file that I have sent to ERP, because there is a fair chance that there might be a problem with the transformation, right? So how would you know? You would know it only when you look at the file that got sent actually, or there might be a problem with the property file as well. So only for support teams difference, I'm just dumping it in SFTP. Nothing more than that. These are the things that you normally run into after 2 weeks or 3 weeks post go live.
That is well. Yeah. That file will help actually.
Yeah.
When we are landing somewhere.
Absolutely. Yes.
So only one thing, one request.
Yes. Yes.
For example, today you have added some lines in a procedural code and something on one notepad file.
Yeah, I will
that
upload
file
this.
Is not getting that file is not getting uploaded over there, where we can.
No, this is the only thing that I changed. I don't think I have updated any other file, but this one I thought of stressing more on logbox
for
here.
Example, yeah. For example, yesterday you uploaded some JSON file as well, and those things are not available to us. I'm not sure whether the rest all can.
JSON is not available?
I mean, non-FBDI file which we were uploading. So there was one file, non-FBDI JSON file also there, something like that.
Correct.
I think some contents, correct, Prasad, while you are explaining, you are adding in your notes or in SQL document also. So those are not getting refreshed in Google Cloud.
Exactly.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll upload this now. So I've made some changes in this file. Because I'm going to upload all these 3 files. Okay, not these 3 files. I'm in FPDA folder. And let me upload this whole folder otherwise. I'm going to replace them as well. Okay. So if you find anything is missing, let me know. I'll also upload that as well. So in this UG63 folder, you have all the files, the non-FPDA file, logbox file, JSON file. Everything is there in this folder.
Thank you, President.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I paused my screen share. Can you see my screen?
We see the SQL file.
Okay, let me just share it again. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Now we see. Yes.
Yeah, I've uploaded that folder here. Uploaded UG63 to FPDA GL daily rates. This has all the files, and to the integrations folder, I've uploaded all the latest files, whatever changes I've done. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. Have a nice weekend. See you on Monday.